Kirk Frost, who has long been notorious for his erratic behavior on Love and Hip Hop, has apparently passed a threshold that has surprised even his closest friends and family. And the reality TV industry is reeling from a crisis that no one saw coming. Reportedly, Kirk lost total control on the set after viewing a never-before-seen secret footage that included his wife Rasheeda and fellow cast member Rasheeda Joc, according to explosive new claims. Yes, a private video so surprising and intense that it caused an emotional breakdown in front of the entire production staff. According to people close to the show, Kirk remained calm. The claimed video is being characterized as intimate, improper, and a betrayal. 1 second, he was rushing across the set, accusing and attacking everyone in sight. Captured on camera, what was actually in that tape, why Kirk was the last to find out. And more significantly, was Rasheeda concealing something the entire time. The cast is in disbelief. This isn't just a battle. It's a bombshell that is tearing apart the foundation of a reality TV business, and behind the scenes, tempers are erupting like never before. Believe us, this is just the beginning. It all began with whispers on the set, the kind that get louder every second until they are unavoidable. For weeks, Kirk Frost had been unusually silent, not looking at anyone, certainly not Rasheeda Joc or Rasheeda. Everyone sensed that something was wrong. Crew members exchanged anxious looks while filming, and cast members cautiously moved near Kirk, uncertain of which version of him they had met that day when the truth finally exploded on the screen. The tension was so great that it could be cut with a knife. Kirk arrived late on Tuesday afternoon for what was supposed to be a typical filming session, his eyes heavy with the storm that had obviously been building long before he set foot on set. He wasn't chatting, he wasn't laughing, he was just. Rasheeda realized something wasn't right when she saw his eyes focused on her from the other side of the room, but she was unable to predict what would happen next. Rumor has it that Kirk was given a flash drive. Nobody knows who delivered it to him 2 nights prior. Some claim it was slid under his dressing room door, while others say it was a former crew member who was fired a few weeks prior. What counts as what? Was a video file called Simply Play Me Kirk did, and insiders claim that what he saw caused him to go into a deep emotional state. Showed Rasheeda and Rasheeda Joc in a hotel room. The video wasn't professionally filmed, rather it was unsteady and unpolished, like a phone camera. Although it wasn't explicitly explicit in the conventional sense, the two were laughing, and it was enough to erode trust. Joker was sitting too close to her while drinking, and he had his hand on her knee. They were conversing as if no one was looking, which may have been the case at the time, but now Kirk had. Watched it repeatedly, and it consumed all of his thoughts. On set, Kirk blew, the cameras were rolling, and the sound crew captured every syllable he slammed. Rasheeda froze as she pushed the chair into the wall and yelled, "So this is what you all been doing behind my back." Forward in an attempt to defuse the situation, but Kirk was not listening. "Don't approach me," Kirk urged, his eyes locked with a raged Joc who paused. "Kirk, you're completely wrong." He tried, but Kirk interrupted him. "No, I saw you two laughing and drinking like you had nothing to cover her legs with. All over you like it's a damn date night?" Kirk's voice broke, and everyone listening could sense that it was heartbreak, betrayal, perplexity, and anger. Rasheeda's voice quivered as she, "You don't know the whole story, Kirk," she murmured softly as she walked near him. "That video ain't what it looks like." But Kirk wasn't having it. "Then tell me what it is, because it appears that you forgot you from where I'm standing." For Wade, producers attempted to intervene and asked that the camera stop, but Kirk rushed by them and said, "No, don't cut anything." The crew was shocked, and the room became silent as they watched what happens when you trust the wrong people. The energy changed completely, with the exception of Kirk's labored breathing. It was no longer only a fight, but rather a breakdown, and Rasheeda stood there in silence, crying uncomfortably and visibly. Rattle stared down, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The social media response was much worse, as someone on set posted a grainy still image from the purported video, which only served to feed. With timelines exploding with hashtags like #Jokanda revealed and #Rasheeda betrayed Kirk, fans of conjecture were picking. Kirk was already on fire, and it only made it worse. Later that night, in his separate green room, Kirk sat by himself, slouched on the couch, with his head in his. In an attempt to get a statement, a producer crept in. Kirk looked up, his eyes burning, instead. "How long do you think she's been lying to me?" There was a hum in the air as Rasheeda was outside in her car, and the question wasn't even intended to be replied. She yelled at a staff member, but no one had the courage to leave until someone explained what Kirk had seen. "If he saw something, let me see it too." This Kirk hadn't showed it to anybody else. The only evidence was what he said, and the picture was now making the rounds online. Yanj attempted to repair the damage by dragging a producer aside and insisting, "Nothing happened that night, man. We were all staying at the same hotel after a club appearance, and she stopped by for about 10 minutes. We simply talked." However, nobody paid much attention when the picture was revealed, and the perception that prevailed was not favorable to the men who had been on the sidelines up until that point. During a confessional shoot, he couldn't contain his emotions anymore and stared directly into the camera, saying, "Kurt has been through a lot. However, if I were him and I witnessed my wife cuddling with another man, I couldn't hold it against him for losing it." His remarks, "Innocent, nah, I'd lose my mind too," mirrored what many fans were already thinking. Anarchy broke out among several cast members in the show's private group chat. Agreed with Rasheeda that Kirk was exaggerating, while others supported Kirk, stating that he had every right to feel deceived. Mommy even wrote, "You'll need to relax. Keep in mind that cameras don't often capture the whole picture. We've all been edited filthy." However, Kirk wasn't considering editing. Instead, he was considering loyalty, trust, and the years he'd invested in this marriage, only to be taken aback by a few minutes of shaky video. He hadn't even publicly challenged Rasheeda, although it all took place in front of cameras, friends, and strangers. When someone said that Rasheeda hadn't gone home the night before, Kirk's head sprang up, and he wasn't sure how to take any of it back. No one asked him a question but them. The inference was obvious. The room fell silent once more. Kirk got up, grabbed his jacket, and left without saying anything while the cameras continued to roll. The true narrative starts there where Kirk rushed off the set, leaving the crew stunned and unsure of what to do. Rasheeda was still seated in her. She tried to gather her thoughts in the car outside. Her mind was racing over everything, every encounter with Kirk, every time with Joc, and now the sudden explosion of chaos. Was it really just a mistake? But despite her best efforts to tell herself that things weren't as horrible as they appeared, the truth struck her like a ton of bricks. Kirk had witnessed that footage, and when something like that was publicly visible, could it ever be fully removed? The rest of the cast and crew started chatting among themselves, and rumors started to get louder. Did Kirk truly believe they were together? Spread like wildfire. 1. Is there something we didn't know about? A crew member inquired, anxiously looking around. Another gave a straightforward response. Uncomfortable with the tension in the air, the producers decided to contact an expert because Kirk was unable to speak at this time, regardless of the reality behind the video. Emergency conference, but who would be in charge of repairing the damage? Rasheeda Joc, or was Kirk responsible for taking responsibility for his own actions? Rasheeda eventually got enough. Her palm trembled as she dialed the number, and it kept ringing until Kirk finally answered. "Listen to me, Rasheeda," she said strainedly. Rasheeda Kirk's voice was almost audible above a whisper, but the rage was evident. "I never meant to hurt you that night. Don't talk to me about that night," she said, her voice shaking. "You want to tell me nothing?" Rasheeda took a deep breath to attempt to calm herself, but I wasn't. "And you want to tell me that I'm crazy for thinking that anything was wrong since I witnessed it with my own eyes? Hide anything, Kirk? You must realize that I gave everything for this relationship when I married you, and now you are going behind my back and having an affair with my friend." When the call went silent, Rasheeda fell into her seat and stared out the window, her pulse pounding in the silence. "I was supposed to think that's the part you don't understand, and you simply want to act like it's nothing." It was obvious from that loud phone call that Kirk had made up his decision and that their trust had been broken, but how can she even start to convey the issue to him now? She helped him realize that things weren't as they seemed back on set. Things were getting out of hand, and the producers convened an emergency meeting, but it wasn't apparent who would take charge. Kirk, given his explosion, or would Rasheeda have to present her own account of what transpired? Whatever the case, one thing was certain. This was no longer just a video. It was about a marriage that was going to end, and no one knew how to save it. Meanwhile, Joc was doing everything he could to stay out of the media frenzy since he knew that one mistake could end his career. However, fans began taking sides, with some supporting Joc and others accusing him of betraying Kirk in the most heinous manner, despite his attempts to keep quiet. And Joc, a close friend of Kirk's, simply wanted to get away from the chaos, but how could he do that when everyone was watching and waiting for him to make a mistake? Then came a call that would alter everything. Had finally given his opinion on the matter and had viewed the video as well. But what really caught everyone off guard was the text message he sent to Kirk. "Hey Kirk, man up makes, I know this." I've known Joc long enough to know that he wouldn't do anything to cross that line. And Kirk's emotions were still running high, so even if the situation is awful, you can't keep avoiding it. You need to talk to her. However, Ment's remarks caught him off guard. Perhaps he hadn't considered all the facts or had been too fast to pass judgment. But with his pride on the line, could he honestly look back and acknowledge that he had made a mistake? The reality was, Kirk had no idea, but he was unaware that his reputation, marriage, and life were all on the line, and that every moment that went past. The producers understood that the issue had reached a tipping point and that the show may collapse under the weight of this scandal if they didn't act quickly. But how could they proceed when the stars themselves were? Rasheeda and Joc had been avoiding one another in the midst of this chaos, not because they didn't care, but rather because they recognized the potential harm that their relationship may create. Rasheeda was caught on tape with young Joc in a compromising position, and one of them yelled. Neither of them wanted to add fuel to the fire, but the media gave them no other option. Another person inquired, did Rasheeda's adultery have anything to do with Kirk Frost's outburst? In the comment section, it was a combat zone. Supporters on both of the sides, deeply attacking, defending, and pointing fingers at one another. Their careers, futures, and entire lives were at stake, not just the show. Everyone knew that the next move was crucial, but nobody had the guts to make it. The lines had been drawn, and the damage had already been done. The scene was tense back at the production studio. The true question was if there was anything that could be done to resolve it. Kirk's outburst had started everything, but it wasn't finished yet. As the day went on, it had only just begun. Although producers recognized that seeing Kirk and Rasheeda for a private discussion was essential, they attempted to put together a plan. However, would they be able to salvage anything from the ruins of their broken relationship? But the most important question was still unanswered. Would Joc ever be accepted by the cast again? Or was he now a persona? Was it Rasheeda who was misunderstood and condemned for something that might not have ever occurred? Or was it Kirk who was betrayed by the woman he loved? It was a waiting game, and now one. Since the drama's conclusion was still up in the air and the ramifications from this bombshell controversy was set to ricochet throughout the entire program, nobody was ready for what would happen next. The media was unrelenting, and the steady barrage of rumors and articles had everyone on edge as the aftermath from Kirk's explosive outburst began to spiral out of hand. But it wasn't just Kirk and Rasheeda who were impacted. Rasheeda was by herself in her house, sitting on the couch and browsing through her phone, feeling as like everyone was against her. The comments beneath the videos and images that were filled with a mixture of astonishment, bewilderment, and judgment. How could she have done this to Kirk? It seemed as though her whole life had been condensed into a few seconds of video, a moment that had been blown extremely out of proportion, according to one fan who wrote, "I knew she was hiding something." Scale. But the thing that truly wounded her was the incessant barrage of letters from fans who believed they understood everything and who were so eager to criticize her without even taking the time to comprehend what was actually going on. The most agonizing aspect of it was that they were unaware of the entire tale. They had no idea what she had been going through, what she had attempted to conceal, or why things had transpired as they had, while Kirk was coping with his own emotional storm. Initially, he would have been furious and certain that everything he had saw in that video was real. But following Mandis' letter, he was pondering whether he had made a mistake or whether it was all a misunderstanding. Late one evening, Kirk sat by himself in his studio and watched the tape again. He kept seeing the interactions between Joc and Rasheeda in his mind, and it wasn't the film that disturbed him. Rather, it was the implications of the way she looked at him and the way they laughed together. His phone rang for a few seconds before he finally picked it up and said, "Hey Kirk, what's up?" Could it be that they were keeping something from him, or was he simply being paranoid? "Up. Man, I'm not sure what," a calm, steady voice said over the phone. "To do?" Kirk answered in a frustrated tone, "I'm going crazy about this whole affair, and I'm not sure what's real anymore." Ment responded slowly, "Look, Kirk, you need to relax. I know this is difficult, but the first step is." "I know you're right, but it's difficult, guy, and I feel deceived." Kirk exhaled loudly. "To speak with Rasheeda, get your facts straight before you level any more accusations. You can't solve this if you don't know what you're fixing. I'm not sure if I can trust her anymore because everyone has been lying to me. But if you don't talk to her, you'll never have them. Answers you require, and keep in mind that what's best for your family now comes before yourself. You must make this right, Kirk." The significance of Ment's remarks lingered in the air, and for the For the first time in days, Kirk felt the glimmer of optimism that perhaps he could make things right with Rasheeda. Perhaps there was still a chance to save what they had, but it wouldn't be simple. Kirk reflected deeply the following morning, breathed, and made the decision to confront the storm head-on. He dialed Rasheeda, his fingers shaking as he pressed the button, and when she answered, he could hear her voice hesitating, but she didn't. End the call. Rasheeda, I need to talk to you, Kirk said in a calmer tone than before. We need to clear the air. This has gotten out of hand and I want to. I've been trying to find out the truth, Rasheeda said after a lengthy silence on the other end of the telephone. I never wanted this to happen, she replied quietly, but I got through to you, Kirk. None of it, but you continue to push me away. Kirk's voice wavered as he answered, I don't know what you expect me to do, and I didn't know what to think. But he wanted to understand, so he asked if there was anything going on with you and Chalk. Behind my back? Rasheeda's breath caught, and Kirk briefly doubted whether she was going to reply. But then she said, Kirk, I promise you nothing was happening between me and Joc that video. It's not what it appears like I was simply trying to. Kirk closed his eyes, his thoughts swirling from the anguish and bewilderment of all that had transpired. He was kind, but you have to believe me. Could he trust her? Could he trust the words she said? Rasheeda, Kirk replied softly, I want to believe you, but you have to give me something. Tell me the truth, and maybe we can fix this. I need to know what you're hiding. But there was a lengthy silence before Rasheeda spoke again, her voice barely audible above a whisper. We must cease allowing the outside world to dictate our lives. We have allowed this drama to consume us for too long, and it is destroying us. Kirk inhaled deeply. He knew she was correct, but was it too much? Joc, meantime, was feeling the heat as well. He had made an effort to avoid the spotlight, but the unrelenting focus from the media was intolerable, and fans were assaulting him online, blaming. He was accused of abandoning Kirk, and his career was at stake. The accusations persisted despite his best efforts to avoid them, and in a fit of rage, Joc called his manager and said, I can't keep. When Joc said this, his manager attempted to calm him down. This is ruining everything, he added, his voice tinged with tiredness. I didn't ask for any of this, but now I'm stuck in the middle of this mess. I understand, Joc, but you need to be quiet for the time being. We'll work on damage control, but you need to avoid the spotlight for a while. How am I expected to handle this? To remain silent while everyone is looking at me? Not only is Kirk's reputation at stake, but mine is as well. Despite his annoyance, Chop realized he had no other option because the media circus would not stop. And Kirk and Rasheeda's debate was far from finished. Both were tense, but they both knew they had to decide whether their relationship was worth it. If he didn't handle this wisely, he could lose everything back in the studio. Was this the end of the road, or could they move on from the past? What about Joc? Would he stay in the background, or would his involvement lead to even more issues for everyone? As the days passed, Kirk and Rasheeda's marriage hung in the balance as they continued to talk. Would they figure out a way to patch things up, or was this the beginning of the end? When Kirk and Rasheeda's tension neared a breaking point, the media frenzy showed no signs of abating, and each new headline exacerbated the ongoing. Both of them had suffered from rumors and allegations, and it was obvious that something had to give, but neither was prepared to give up easily. Kirk, still in shock over the video, attempted to concentrate on what was best for his family, but each time he heard people criticizing Rasheeda in a fresh article about the video, his rage flared up again, and he was unable to. One evening following a particularly violent dispute with Rasheeda, Kirk stormed out of the house because he needed space to clear his thoughts, and it was like a fire he couldn't put out. His mind was racing with feelings as he drove aimlessly through the city, and the more he considered everything that had transpired, the more he understood how deeply the entire event had affected him. However, it wasn't just the video. It was the years of unresolved problems between him and Rasheeda, the times they had drifted apart, the times they had neglected one another, and the times they had disregarded one another's needs that were wearing him down. Of that had accumulated and was now leaking out, while Rasha sat by herself in their house with her phone mute next to her. She had called Kirk multiple times, but he had not returned her calls. She had tried so hard to make things work, but now she wasn't sure if the arguments and accusations between them were getting to be too much. Rasheeda's phone buzzed as she was ready to give up, but she paused before opening it because it was a message from an unknown number. When she eventually opened the message, her heart skipped a beat because she was wondering who could be texting her at this hour. It was a video with the headline "Rasheeda's Secret Deal Exposed." Rasheeda clicked on the video with trembling hands, and to her complete surprise, she discovered that it was a tape of her encounter. The video was blurry, but the words were very clear. "Rasheeda, we can offer you more money more." She was talking about her possible future on a new reality program with a representative from another network. When the producer's voice said in the video, "You deserve to be in the spotlight, and we can make you the star you've always been meant to be," Rasheeda's heart fell when she realized what this meant. In the back of her mind, she had always worried if her time on the show was coming to an end due to the drama, the continual pressure, and the constant bickering. She had been considering her alternatives because this meeting was a secret from Kirk. But after watching this video, she realized that Kirk had betrayed her trust, and tears filled her eyes as she sat there looking at the screen she had always attempted to be. Open and honest with Kirk, but now that everything was unraveling, the cover agreement she had been contemplating was revealed, and Kirk would soon learn of her heartbreak as she recognized that the person who meant the most to her might have been lost in her quest to take charge of her own destiny, while Kirk continued to drive in a directionless manner and was also faced with it. He was shocked when his phone rang and nearly didn't answer when he saw it was Ivy, who was the last person he wanted to speak to at the moment. However, he was aware that he needed to respond. Perhaps Men's had some counsel, but in any case, he needed to speak with someone. "Hey Kirk, how are you?" "I'm losing it, man," Kirk muttered in a low, worried voice, sounding more worried than normal. "The entire situation with Rasheeda is frustrating me, and now I'm seeing things online that I'm not even sure whether to trust." Was quiet for a while before answering. "Kirk, you need to stop allowing these rumors to control you. You need to talk to Rasheeda. You can't fix anything by yourself." "I don't know where this all went wrong, but I understand God." Kirk responded, his voice shaking. "I don't know if I can trust her anymore. She has been keeping stuff from me." Stated in a calmer tone now, "But hun, stop blaming her for everything. You two are in this together, therefore you must find out what happens." Kirk did respond. His mind was racing immediately, but after hearing Ben DC's comments, he realized that he couldn't continue to avoid the reality and that he had to confront it, no matter how unpleasant it was. Later that evening, when he returned home, Rasheeda was. Kirk waited at the doorway for a time, watching her, but she was still awake and sitting in the living room with her phone in her hand, seemingly lost in thought. It was obvious that everything that had transpired had affected them both. Rasheeda looked up and saw him standing there, but neither of them was ready to give up just yet. "Kirk, we need to talk," she whispered softly. Kirk nodded and moved to sit next to her, breaking the stillness between them. "I know, Rasheeda. I've been thinking a lot," he said. Rasheeda drew a long breath. "I didn't want for things to become this terrible. I never wanted to harm you." Kirk's eyes were filled with grief and uncertainty as he looked at her. "But you've been hiding a lot from me." "I didn't want to tell you, Kirk." Rasheeda acknowledged, her voice trembling, that she didn't want to give more fuel to the fire, but I was searching for a way out, a way to take charge of my own destiny. This whole situation. TV is exhausting, so I had to consider what was best for me. Kirk looked at her, the words soaking in as he considered Rasheeda quitting their program. He hadn't been ready for the fact that they would be parting ways. "So you were thinking about leaving?" "I don't know what else to do, Kirk, I can't," he said, his voice barely audible above a whisper. Rasheeda nodded, her eyes welling with tears. "Continue acting as though nothing is wrong, but I never meant it to be this way." Her words struck him like a ton of bricks. Was their marriage really at its conclusion, or was this simply another obstacle they could overcome? Overwhelmed as they sat there, neither knowing what the future contained, the media maelstrom outside raged on, and they both realized at that moment that their lives and their bond would never be the same again. Kirk and Rasheeda's silence was deafening, and neither of them knew how to proceed. They were sitting in their house attempting to put things back together, but fixing what had been damaged or dealing with the fallout from the chaos that had taken over their lives every day had become a new headline and a new controversy. Kirk's thoughts were racing about what remained of his marriage. He had always been a proud guy who stood up for what he believed in, but now the woman he loved. It hurt more than he could have ever imagined when the woman he had built his life with slipped from his grasp, but he also realized that Rasheeda had her secrets and that he wasn't the only one at fault. Rasheeda, on the other hand, felt a great pain in her heart as she realized that her decisions and the video that had started this tempest were only the beginning. Kirk had always made an effort to prioritize their family, but it now seemed as though everything she did and every choice she made had simply made everything worse. In the time, the thought of leaving the show and taking charge of her own future seemed so vital. but now she wasn't sure whether it had been worth the expense because she felt a lot of guilt. Although she was aware that the secret she had concealed from Kirk had brought them to this point of devastation, she had no other option given the public's relentless pressure from reality TV. She had always been tough and had always acted like the ideal wife and mother, but deep down she felt suffocated by the constant turmoil. The agreement with the other network had appeared to be a means of regaining her independence, but now that she felt as though her actual personality was being wiped, she wasn't sure she had made the correct decision, and she was sitting in front of Kirk. "I never meant for this to happen," Rasheeda said in a shaky voice while wiping a tear from her face. "I just wanted something for me," she said. Kirk remained silent for a while, staring into her eyes as he tried to take in everything that had occurred. His mind was racing, but he was unable to let go of the fact that he still loved her in spite of the hurt, betrayal, and lies. "I know you didn't mean for any of this," Kirk finally murmured, his voice quiet but full of emotion. "Of the woman who had been his partner for so many years. But Rasheeda, you're not the only one who's hurting here. Being disoriented and battling my own issues and emotions doesn't excuse what transpired. I shouldn't have behaved the way I did. I don't even know who I am anymore, Kirk. I'm not sure if I'm the lady you fell in love with or if I'm someone I don't even recognize." Rasheeda looked down at her hands, which were shaking in her lap. As he heard her words, his heart ached. The lady in front of him, who had always been strong and self-assured, was now broken and unsure of herself, and he wanted to hang on to her. He wanted to remind her of her identity, but he wasn't sure if he still had the right to do so because of the video and the betrayal, which had destroyed their relationship. Could they fix it? They were talking when there was a knock on the door. Both of them glanced up in surprise, and Kirk got up to answer it, not knowing who may be there at this late hour. When he opened the door, he was confronted by a well-known man. DC entered without waiting for an invitation, his countenance solemn, having been monitoring the scenario and learning about everything that had been happening, and he realized he couldn't continue to watch from the sidelines. "What's going on, Kirk? I've been hearing all sorts of things," Mintz remarked in a tone that was more straightforward than normal. Men looked at Rasheeda, who was sitting calmly on the couch with her eyes downcast, and sighed while running a hand through his hair. "You know what's going on with Rasheeda in the video? Everything is falling apart. Are you Rasheeda?" "Okay," he said, his tone softer than when he spoke to Kirk. "I know things have been crazy, but you have to fight for what's yours. You can't let this destroy you." Rasheeda looked into Menace's eyes. "I've been fighting for a long time, Megs, but I'm not sure if I've been fighting for the right reasons. I'm not sure if I can fight anymore," she said with a slight smile on her lips. He crossed his arms and looked between them, saying, "I know you're both in pain, but you have a choice. Either you work to fix it, or you let it tear you apart. You can't do it alone. Both of you." Kirk and Rasheeda looked at one another. They were worn out and fatigued from the stress of living in the spotlight and the ongoing drama, but they also understood. Kirk sat in the room as Mendes left, saying that Mendes was correct and that they wouldn't have a chance if they didn't face this together. The weight of everything still hung in the air as they lowered themselves back down beside Rasheeda, but for the first time in a long time, they both. There seemed to be a ray of hope that perhaps taking Rasheeda's hand in his in private, perhaps we should start afresh. Rasheeda nodded, her eyes brimming with a mix of hope and optimism. "In doubt, Kirk? I'm not sure if we can, but I'm willing to try for us." Our family, they sat quietly, the decision weighing heavily on them, assumes responsibility for the drama and controversies that the media would continue to cover, but for the first time, they refused to allow it to control their life. Instead, they had to figure out how to go on, reestablish their connection, and confront the difficulties they would face together outside of their home, where the headlines and whispers would never stop. And everyone would continue to observe, but Kirk and Rasheeda had made it. They made a private commitment to fight for their marriage and for one another, which ultimately proved to be all that mattered. As the days went by, they both realized how far they still had to go, but with every step they were gradually returning to one another, and regardless of what transpired or how challenging the path was, as the drama between Kirk and Rasheeda comes to an end, we are prepared to confront the question as a family. Remains, will they be able to mend their broken relationship, or is the harm too great? The world is watching, and what you do next could completely alter the course of events. Do you believe that Kirk was correct to respond in that manner, or is Rasheeda justified in her behavior? Will her marriage last, or is it irreparable? Please share your thoughts. Comments below. Did Kirk and Rasheeda make the right decision? Will they eventually get back together? Or is their romance coming to an end? Please make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons on this video. To ensure you don't miss any of the updates on this continuing drama, click the notification bell. The narrative isn't finished yet, so keep a watch out for more startling discoveries on the developing story.